Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to keep pushing on with our current army project, which is the Sorcerer Kings for Conquest. And we're finally going to come to our very first infantry unit, which are the Ghols. So these are some like lesser elemental spirits. They're super angry, and the more they use their magical abilities and conjure fire to conquer their foes, they immolate from the inside. So, in the starter box for the army, you get 24 of these little guys. And with any army project for a rank and file game where you have tons of infantry, you can get really, really bogged down in the details of the miniatures. And these guys are no different. So this is one of the sculpts for the unit leaders, and we've got flames snaking around his hands. He's got fire coming out of his mouth and the back of his head. Then he's got like his body is disintegrating down here on the legs and all of that. We've got skin, we got metal, we have cloth. There's so many different textures here that if you tried to do all of those to a really high standard, you're going to bog yourself down. You're going to get really tired trying to slog through, 24 of these. So we're going to remedy that. Since this is a rank and file game, the miniatures are meant to be viewed together in giant blocks. So a standard unit will contain 12 of them, and then you can reinforce them, as much as you want. For me personally, I can go up to 24. So we're going to paint these in a way that they'll look good in a group, but we're not going to be super worried about all of that detail. So the very first thing, let's talk about a little bit of prep. I went ahead and primed the miniature in white, which is why there's this harsh glare with all of my white lights above my desk. So we're going to use a lot of translucent paint here. And the very first thing we're going to do is go with Tesseract Glow from Citadel. Now, this is a very interesting paint. I believe it was probably the precursor to their contrast line of paints. So I feel like when they were tinkering with the formula, they released this, just kind of as a tester to see how it would do with the public. And the really cool thing with this particular paint that I haven't really seen in any other hobby paint is that it's actually two different colors. So you have this really, really light sort of lime green, really saturated with a lot of yellow in it. And then you can see the really bright green pigment that kind of separates all the way down at the bottom of the container. And so you have to mix this really, really well. Like, put some ball bearings in here, shake the ever-loving, life out of this bottle for like 3 minutes until you don't see any of that green on the bottom. You get one uniform color. But when this dries on your model, the paint separates. So down in the recesses, you get this darker green. And then on all of your high points, you get a progression from sort of a lime green all the way up to a yellow. So we're going to do that with all of the flames. It'll kind of give like a magical look to all of the flames. And then I did want to call out, I left the back of his head off on purpose so that we can fill in that space as well as this hollow cavity in the torso. And it'll look like, the flames are just coming out of his body. So let me get this shooken up and we'll get started. All we're going to do is load up a brush and just apply this to all of the flames. Now, while I'm doing this, I do want to take a second and thank our video sponsor, Para-Bellum, the makers of Conquest, for sponsoring this video. And if you are interested in maybe starting the Sorcerer Kings like I am, or maybe you're interested in one of their other factions, or maybe you already play the game and you just want a little discount on your minis. We are an affiliate with them, so you can use our code JTS Wargaming when you check out on their web store, and that'll save you 10% on your first purchase. There will be links down in the description of the video so that you can hop on over to their web store and kind of, peruse and take a look and see all the cool minis that they have on offer. I right now am working on the brand new army, the Sorcerer Kings, but I've got a pile of other stuff waiting for me to finish these guys to get started on. So also let me know down in the comments what army I should start working on next. So we can go Dwegholm, which are their dwarves. We can go 100 Kingdoms, which are sort of their standard, European fantasy army. We could do Nords, which are fantasy Vikings. We could do City-States, which are sort of fantasy Greeks with like lots of mythological beasts like satyrs and minotaurs. So let me know down in the comments what you guys are excited to see. And whatever army gets the most votes down there, that's what I will be working on next. So now we've got that Tesseract glow applied, and the next item we're going to work on is going to be all of the skin. Now, I personally was practicing with painting some darker skin tones. It's something that I just don't have a lot of familiarity with. And the theme of the army is somewhat sort of like Middle Eastern, historical, Persia, India, that sort of thing. So in sticking with that theme, I felt like it was a good time to experiment, and these guys were the perfect subjects. So the two colors that I ended up settling on are from the AK Deep Shade range. So there's Pure Grime, which this is going to give us a darker, rich brown sort of skin tone. And then Reddish Filth will give us a slightly lighter, but not, Caucasian, with a little bit more red hue in there. Now, I like both of them. For this demo model, though, I'm going to go ahead and use Pure Grime, and then once we get the skin done, I'll show you a comparison of what the two look like. So if you're not familiar with the deep shades, this is really just AK's answer to contrast and speed paints from all the other manufacturers. Now, their formulation tends to be more transparent, but it is a thicker medium that takes a little bit longer to dry, in my opinion, than a standard like Citadel contrast paint. And that gives you a couple of, advantages. So for one, it gives you a longer time to sort of see where the paint wants to settle, and allows you to, push the pigment exactly where you want it, which is pretty cool. And the only real detriment that I've run into is that it takes longer to dry. And it's not that much longer. It's really, maybe a couple of extra minutes compared to a Citadel contrast paint. But so all we're going to do is cover all of the skin that's still showing. And you can kind of see here on the body where I dotted that glow around. It's translucent enough that you can carry it over that that line, and it just kind of looks like the glow is, emanating from under the skin, which is a really cool effect. And so just so that you guys can see the excuse me, difference in tone, so on the right we have a gent that was done with the Pure Grime. And then over on the left, we have a guy that had their skin done with the, what's it called, Reddish Filth. So I really like both of them. I will definitely keep those in my repertoire for in the future. I think that the pure grime definitely works really, really well for nailing like a darker skin tone. And you could get some more variation in the finish if you did a pure slap chop. I just went with a white prime, but if you had that slap chop underneath, you could get some really cool variation in your shadows and your highlights and so forth with this color. So now that the skin is out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and work on the cloth. Now, as I just spoiled by showing you guys two finished models, for the cloth, I went with Carmine Dawn. Honestly, you could have used any like really, really bright color for this. I wanted something that wasn't going to run into the yellow green of the flames or into the brown of the skin. And even though some of the skin tones have that slightly reddish tint from the reddish filth, this is such a bright magenta that I felt like it stood far enough apart. So we're going to go ahead and coat all of the cloth in this color. And so for these guys, we're really just looking at the loincloths and the hats. And with this color, kind of learned through trial and error to apply it somewhat thickly. If you apply it too thin, you end up with sort of a pink, which is not really, really what we're going for. We want that really, really vibrant magenta to come through. And as you just saw me do, if you happen to spill this over, if you had too much on your brush like I just did, you can quickly just rinse your brush off and pick that right back up, just like you could any other, speed paint or contrast paint. This stuff is very easy to work with. All right, so with that applied, we're probably at, call it, 95% of the way done with our good enough paint job. So all that's left is we're going to pick out these VAM braces on the leader model and the little chains that he's got. We're going to pick that out in silver. And so for that, I'm just turning to Citadel Lead Belcher. It was the closest silver that I had on hand when I started this project. And so I'm just keeping it consistent, but any sort of medium tone silver paint will do. And this is probably the most nerve-wracking part of this whole painting process, is that you really, really have to be neat and make sure that you put this exactly where you want it. So you want to brush with a really good tip and just take your time, be as neat as possible so that we don't have to touch up any of our previously painted areas. However, if you do just as simple as going back over it with some white paint and then reapplying whichever, contrast or technical paint needed to go in those areas. And with all of those silver areas base coated, the only step we have left is to shade them with some good old Nuln oil. Now, this is the new shade formulation, not the old Nuln oil that came in a larger pot. And all we're going to do is get a liberal amount of this and just run it all over all of these silver areas, including the chains on the forearms. And this will just help darken down all of that metal, take some of the shine away, and give some nice contrast since it runs up against the super bright flames. And so now the paint is still drying, but here is our finished subject. And you know what? Self-admittedly, he's not that great, but he is good enough. So just to kind of demonstrate what I was talking about, so there's plenty of detail here that we completely ignored. So we didn't paint the gems on the van braces, all of the sort of bits of his body that are kind of fading away. We could have done super complicated blends on all of those bits. We could have, done complicated blending on all of the skin to kind of show the shadows and highlights, and give more definition there and so forth. But because this is a rank and file system, a lot of all of those details would get lost on the table. So to demonstrate that, we've got a little movement tray, and we got 4 of our dudes that are all completed. We'll just go ahead and pop them in to the tray. And when you view them as a group, even, looking at them up close, your eye tends to take in the whole picture and not really focus on any one particular little tiny detail. And they look good enough. You know what? These guys are sort of the trash units of the force, your chafe, if you will. So they're really there to get on the board turn 1 and die either turn 2 or 3 and go right back in your miniatures case. So don't let unpainted minis stop you from playing Conquest or any other miniature game that catches your eye. You can get all of these massed units painted up very simply, just get some color on them, and they'll look good enough. It'll serve the purpose. And whenever you find that you have some extra time, there's nothing stopping you from coming back and adding in a little bit more effort into making them look really great later. Well, that's all I've got for today's video. Again, I want to shout out Para-Bellum-Games. Thank you so much for sponsoring the channel. Again, that link and discount code JTS Wargaming are down in the description of the video if you want to save 10% on your Conquest purchases. Also, I want to make sure I shout out our channel member, Mr. Roland Lucas. You rock. If you would like to support the channel, click that like and notification and subscribe button. Do all the clicks underneath the video. That really helps the algorithm kind of push this content out to other people who may benefit from seeing it. Share it with a friend. All that word of mouth stuff goes a really long way. But thanks so much, guys. That's all I've got for today. I think next time we're going to move on to some of the Djinn units for the Sorcerer Kings. We're actually coming up pretty close to the end. We got the Djinn, we have the Rajkur, and then we've got our heroes. And I've got another Flamecaster unit where I'm going to do something different from what I did in the fire tutorial video I did a few videos back. But yeah, you can expect some more Conquest content coming out real soon. Till next time, keep slaying that gray, and I'll catch you in the next one.